Welcome to Out from the Cube. We are doing our Wednesday with Jayson Wells on Thursday at 4 o'clock. So that's our Wednesday. We're a little late to it, but that's the logistics of being with clients and with Jayson's schedule, and we fit it in when we can. And appreciate you making time, Jayson. I know you're on the tail end of a move, or you're all done, you're all moved out, utilities are on.
Yeah. Everything is in package. One place. Yeah, everything is in one place, so it's better than it was a week ago, but still kind of chaotic around here.
Perfect. Moving is one of the my least favorite things to do. So I'm not going to jump in.
I also appreciate all your help in that too. Thanks for all that.
Yeah, I'm glad that I could help. So if you want to know about Jayson, I was thinking about this earlier today. I always kind of talk a little bit about Jayson to get it going, but Jayson's now a regular with us. If you want to know about Jayson, his background, our relationship, how we got to know each other, just go back to some other episodes. We're just going to jump right into it today. Jayson, I did an episode on Monday of this week. Usually Monday's just an episode that I put out, no guests, and just some things that are on my mind, things I've read or people I've talked to or podcasts I've listened to. And this past week, I really kind of made it a focus that my theme for the week was going to be momentum and then kind of retaining my focus throughout the week on creating momentum. And I essentially kind of started talking about my mornings and just being more, having more of a ritual with my mornings, creating momentum for my day through my mornings, and just really trying to get after it a little bit better. And actually asked people to call me out and hold me accountable to that, which some people have done. So that being said, today I get up early. I think you also get up early. I got up this morning at 4:25, and I was at a CrossFit gym at 4:50. So the first time in my life, I found my way to a CrossFit gym. Now, this particular CrossFit gym I wound up at because of some networking and some people I know and having some coffee with some people. And so I was there at 4:50. And how this is going to leverage into our talk a little bit today is I got into that. It started at 5 o'clock. It ended at 6. And what I really enjoyed about it is this, and I am going to sign up for it. I'm going to make it a regular part of my week. You're into Orange Theory. Orange Theory, I think, that's not a Missouri thing, is it? Is that a national brand?
Yeah, it's a national thing.
It's a national thing.
Yeah.
What I like about that, and I don't know anything about Orange Theory, but what I like about the CrossFit training that I did and what I hear about is kind of a community, people doing the same exercises, people rooting for each other, and kind of people tapping out with one another and encouraging and all that. What I enjoyed that. And that's one part that I think I would really kind of cling to with kind of that environment. 2, they had this guy that just kind of circulated around and was kind of coaching people, spent a lot of time with me, correct form and feedback and pushing me and driving me and all this sort of stuff. And I really enjoyed that. But what was on my mind as some of that was happening was when I go to another gym, a Club Fitness or a Gold's Gym or do any of that, I put headphones on and I scroll through my phone. I don't know what I'm doing. I take long breaks. I'm not accountable to anybody. Nobody's talking to me. I'm not getting better. I'm not doing anything. But today I was like being pushed by somebody. I was being coached by somebody. I was accountable to somebody, and I really liked it. And then you and I had a very, very brief discussion today about the need for always needing a coach. And the first thing I thought about was that guy today. And I was like, I needed that. And in order for me to get fit and get to another level and to, really care about my fitness and all that, I think I can't do it myself. I just can't do it myself. I'm not good enough. I'm not driven enough. I'm not motivated enough. I don't have that in me like other people do. This comes back to a conversation a week or so ago where you and I talked about Grover, I think his name is, who is Michael Jordan's coach, and the need for the best basketball player in the world to continue to have a coach and be pushed and driven and accountable to somebody. And you and I kind of touched on that real quick. And you definitely had some takes on always having a coach, seeking out a coach, and getting that feedback and accountability from a coach.
Yeah, I mean, before I even get into that, I'm gonna stretch you a little bit. And
Okay.
you say you're not motivated enough, you're not determined enough, and I'm gonna ask you to throw a little 3-letter word in there and just throw in a yet.
Yes.
Throw in a yet, because
I like that.
When you say that the way that you said it, it puts you in a fixed mindset, and as soon as you say yet, then it keeps you in that growth mindset. So I'm always looking to push you.
Perfect. I'm on it. I'm writing it down, man. Writing it down.
Man, as far as the coaches thing goes, man, we could go probably as deep as you want to get. Obviously, me coming from an athletic background, I have pretty much always had a coach. You and I started this conversation with talking about Tim Grover. We also, a couple weeks back, you mentioned watching Kobe, an interview with Lewis Howes. And one of the things that really resonated with me about that interview, like out of all of the awesome things that he said, was that part where he first retired, those first 6, 8, 12 months after he retired, and he let himself go, and he enjoyed himself, and he did all of the things that he couldn't do while he was one of the best in the NBA, one of the best athletes in the world. And now here he is, 18 months into retirement, and he's right back in the gym at 4 o'clock. And the question that he posed was, how do you motivate yourself when you don't know the end result? And man, like that, well, like I got, I'm sure our listeners hear by now that I get goosebumps, like things that really hit me, they give me goosebumps. Because that's a question that is not only applicable in the athletic world, it's applicable in the business world, it's applicable in our personal lives, it's applicable wherever. And so going back to our coaches, I feel like coaches are those people. I think I mentioned on a previous episode, my dad told me something that I never really sunk in until it sunk in. And he used to always tell me, when he coached me my 8th grade year, he's not a basketball guy. I told you he's a musician, he's a jazz musician, and he was just that dad that was available to coach 8th grade boys,
Right.
have time and accessibility to do it. But something that he always told me is, he said that coaches are simply people who take people to places that they can't go on their own. And that's what you got this morning.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I got on every team I've ever been in. That's what I'm getting now as I transition out of the athletic space and into the facilitation and presenting space. I'm getting coaching. And so why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't Michael Jordan? One of the things that makes Michael Jordan, one of the things that makes Kobe Bryant, one of the things that is making LeBron James, is the fact that those guys have come back. LeBron, 16 years now. Kobe, 20 years. I think Mike was 14 or 15 years total with those last couple that he shouldn't have played in Washington. Those guys came back better at something every single year.
Right.
Mm-hmm. None of those guys came into the league as great shooters. They all left as great shooters. None of those guys, came in as great defenders. They left as great defenders. They made something, whether it was an individual, an individual move, or whether it was something that was a total revamp and rehaul of their game. They got better at something. Tim Grover, he's in the picture. He had very little to do with Michael on the court. He had a lot to do with Michael's mentality and Michael's physical change, which enabled him to be able to do some of the things that he did on the court. A coach to me was always a reminder, especially coming from the athletic space. A coach to me was always a reminder of 2 things. You're never as good as you think you are.
Right.
And there's no such thing as perfection. You can always get better. Like those right. two things were paramount in having a coach and being coached my whole life.
Yeah. And so if we look at that in a business sense with salespeople and C-suite executives, I just think a lot of what I have seen or what I hear about is, hey, I made it to this point. I can do it by myself. I don't need anybody. Do what I say, this guy that I keep mentioning, Barry Waymiller, who is the the Barry Waymiller group. I forget the gentleman's name. I want to say it's Chapman. He's the CEO of that and does an incredible job. Bob Chapman. Bob Chapman. Phenomenal.
That is actually who I'm doing my facilitations with. I don't know if we ever discussed that.
No, I don't think we have.
The Barry Waymiller Leadership Institute, BWLI, they call it. That's who I'm learning and doing and going down the facilitation path with, is that group.
Oh, wow. So there's some conversation to go on there.
Yeah.
But he talks just about this, humility and, always trying to get better and always hunting out mentors and, and finding a group of people that you can bounce ideas around, and you're never there. You haven't arrived. And I see that, when I read that story, when I read Grover's book about Jordan and those people, my mind is always kind of on the athletic leadership motivation space, but it's also really on how to leverage that into the business world. And, those people that are at the top are those humble people that just are continuing to your point. Jordan comes back as a great defensive player, or comes back as a better defensive player, a better shooter, a better rebounder, a better, whatever it might be, right? These guys, Kobe, LeBron, and Jordan. But I wonder, me personally, or the people that are listening to this, the off season of our lives, whatever that is, whatever that time is, I wonder how we come back. I wonder how we get better on a quarterly basis or the off season of our life, and who's coaching us and how we're seeking out that coaching. Because I know we talk a lot about basketball, but that's business, life, team, leadership skills.
I would actually prefer to talk about it in a business setting, and I'll throw in, an athletic background with it. But I feel like it's more imperative in the business setting because there's less of it. Because in the business setting, you have a bunch of guys or ladies, but let's call it what it is, predominantly guys, that reach a certain point and think that because I've reached that point, I've arrived.
Right.
And that's the beauty of coaching. A coach is always there to tell you you haven't arrived. A coach is always there to tell you, and the worst thing, I feel like the worst thing that you can have is some success. Because when you have some success, that makes it more difficult and more easy to say, look at what I've done. I've risen up to CEO status or CFO status or COO status. I've done that in 8 years when nobody else has done it in less than 12. Look at what I've done. And there's a level of success. There's a cloud that goes with the level of success that can prohibit you from continuing to grow. You have never arrived. Right. A couple years ago, Drake made a song, started from the bottom, now I'm here. Now you're where? Now you're where? You're just at the point because hopefully here is just another stepping stone to there. Because, and again, I can take it as athletic, but I would actually prefer, and I'm more interested in the non-athletic point because, man, that coach always was able to find something to, again, take you to a place that you weren't able to go to by yourself, whether it was bringing your elbow in a little bit more on your jump shot, or whether it was as a C-suite executive in an organization, if it's somebody, a coach, coming in and saying, man, George, you would be so much more effective and efficient if you listen to your employees a little bit more. If you like any of those things that's going to constantly keep you at that place of growth and improvement and development, like that's what coaching is.
Yeah, the circle back. That Lewis Howes Kobe Bryant thing is really was really impactful to me. And I remember exactly what you said with the story you told earlier. One thing I took from that, took many things from it, was the coaching his dad gave him when he, at the very beginning of the interview, his dad essentially gave him some coaching that said, I don't care if you score 60 or score 0. I'm going to love you no matter what. Absolutely. And Kobe said that was so impactful to him because it gave him the freedom to mess up and it gave him confidence. And so that coaching there. So it's very much everything you've just said, but it's always like that. Isn't it? It's crazy to me. Now I'm getting off tangent here a little bit. One phrase, one person, one phrase from somebody you respect, love, admire, how that can just change your life. One phrase. So his dad, he loves, respects, admires his dad. And his dad just looks at him and says, hey, listen, Kobe, you score 0, you score 60. I'm going to love you no matter what. And he said that changed his life. So I guess I would circle that back to us as leaders, that we are looked up to, admired, and respected by the people that report to us. And we talked a little bit about this on Monday, but how one phrase can just change those people's lives because you're coaching them. You're coaching them. Yeah. You know, you remember that part of that conversation? I mean, it was right at the beginning, and I really –
Absolutely. And that's the one, like, when I watched it, it's one of the reasons. I don't know if you've watched ESPN, you know how they do those 30 for 30s, where they have this one, and it's turned into like a little docu-series called Basketball: A Love Story.
Right.
My goodness, like things like that, because it puts me in a place to where the things that I've gone through in my life and the people that have poured into my life, I listen to other guys and other girls tell their stories about why they fell in love with the game or how they were able to develop this sense of drive or this sense of accomplishment, and they're so similar. So mine is the same. I tell people all the time, George, I fell in love with basketball because my dad was a musician. And as little amount of sense as that makes, here's the why behind the what. Because my dad was a musician, he didn't know the game enough to live vicariously through me. He didn't know the game enough to put unnecessary pressure or tension on me. So once I started to veer into athletics, he did what any dad and any child would want a dad to do. He patted me on my ass, excuse my language, and he told me, I'll support the heck out you. And he sat there. And when he couldn't, and this is one of those things that is so important. I actually got this from my lady, and when she said it, it was just like listening to a Kobe Bryant or a LeBron James or a Michael Jordan say it. I never worded it like I'm about to tell you until I heard her say it, but it is exactly like the point. Because my dad wasn't knowledgeable enough about the game, he never coached me on the game. He always coached me by my character. So it was never you missed a layup. It was your attitude was piss poor after you missed that layup. Mm-hmm. It was never about the layup. It was about, and so because he coached me through character and he coached me, like those were the intangibles that I am now as a 42-year-old man, those are the intangibles that I'm teaching anybody that picks up a basketball and anybody that has never picked up a basketball, those intangibles, like coaching character. And that's where we're at. You know, you mentioned going off on a tangent. I could go off on a tangent on my own, but that's where we're at as a society. We're in a society where our intangibles are gone. The intangibles of integrity, the intangibles of discipline and work ethic and perseverance, like those principles never change. The times have changed. We've gone from agriculture to industrial to now technology and information. Those things can change. The principles will not change. And the last thing that I'll say about coaching, as you were speaking, you think about why most people don't want coaching. I think of two main reasons. Number one, they don't know how to handle feedback,
right,
which we've talked about before.
Right.
And number two, they are afraid to put themselves in a position where they may or are open to making mistakes. Because if I am an expert at anything, that means that I'm there, and God forbid that I make a mistake. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm an expert, I don't need to be coached. If I'm an expert, that is the biggest farce that I've ever heard of. Like I tell kids all the time, like just because you make it to the NBA or the WNBA, you still go to practice. You don't just make it to the NBA and just rock up for games. Like right. You still practice. And so, man, that is it. That is it.
Yeah, you posted something on, I believe, Instagram in the past 48 hours that came across my feed, and it was something from Warren Buffett. And I think the idea, I might get this wrong, but it was something along the lines of, I don't need to know you for you to be a mentor of mine, but I think essentially kind of a coach in my So I guess my question is, who's coaching you? And I know that you don't know Warren. You may know Warren Buffett. I don't think you do. But like, you have people coaching you don't know, and then you have people that you meet with. And I know that you're kind of on this. You're on the hamster wheel of improvement and growth and networking and sharpening your sword. But who are the people you're kind of reaching out to? Who's coaching you at 42?
Here's the awesome part to that question. Everybody. I look for opportunities of growth and opportunities to be coached in every situation. And so, yes, I have a circle of people that I can call, or I can do a podcast with, or I can go to coffee or lunch or dinner with. Yes, I have those people. So for me, there's 3 tiers. I have those tangible people that are in my call log that are here in St. Louis that I could go to lunch or coffee with. And then there's a second tier of people that are in my call log, but they're in other cities that make it physically, difficult for us to meet unless they're here or I'm there or whatever. So there's that second tier, but we can pick up the phone and we can call. And then there's a third tier, which I know is a tier that most people don't even think about. We live in 2018, George.
Yep.
You can no, I do not know Warren Buffett, but I know Warren Buffett.
Right.
No, I don't know Lewis Howes, but I know Lewis Howes. I don't know Tom Bilyeu, but I know Tom Bilyeu, Simon Sinek, John Gordon, all of I don't know these guys personally, but because I'm so immersed in their information, they become my coaches.
Right.
So that phrase of you're most like the 5 people that you spend the most time around. Well, I've taken that statement and I've gone from 5 to 15 because I've identified 5 people in each of those 3 tiers. Mm-hmm. Who can I go to lunch with? Who can I go to coffee with is one tier. Who can I just call or Skype and maybe talk to once a month? And then who do I not even know that is pouring into me and coaching?
Tell me about Tell me about the things you're learning and being coached by from Bob Chapman, because I found some videos on him. Found him, I was really drawn to him, really fascinated by him. Took 3, 4, 5 pages of notes. What are you learning from him?
I mean, the book says it on its own. Everybody matters, and to go from in 2008 when we went through our most recent serious financial downfall, I guess.
Right.
To take the manufacturing business, to take any business, in almost any business, George, and you know this from experience, from reading, from growing, from learning, in almost any business setting, when things go wrong, the norm is to sacrifice the people for the numbers. Mm-hmm. And what he did when it went wrong, when the financial industry went wrong, what he did was not say that I'm going to sacrifice the people for the numbers. I'm going to care for the people more, right. And consequently the numbers not only stay level, increase 20 million. So, what I'm learning from him is everybody matters. Does everybody matter? And I've been in a room with him. I haven't necessarily met him, but the team, so there's an actual team, Matt Wyatt, Susan Conrad, all people that I'm connected with on LinkedIn, if you want to take a dive into it. Those are the people that I'm very intricately interwoven with. Mm-hmm. But it's all the same because they're just reflections of him. And right. So, again, though he would be in that category of I haven't met Bob, but now Matt and Susan and Sarah and all of those guys are the ones that I am. I can pick the phone up and I can text Matt or Susan. I can call Matt or Susan. And so through them, I know Bob.
Yeah, he had a really good, interesting take on the video. I think it was a YouTube video I watched on him. And it definitely had a sports spin in my mind. This idea of care. And essentially how I looked at this is this, and you and I can feel this because one, we are both from the athletic arena, but two, we both have children that are the same age. If our children were good enough to play college basketball, one of the things that will be very important to me as they are recruited is finding a place for them where they are going to be cared for, taken care of, that the values that I have spent 18 years trying to instill and the character we've tried to develop of integrity and honesty and hard work and, service and all this sort of stuff that we've worked on, that they would continue to get that at a university or under the care of a coaching staff. That would be real. I'm telling you right now, that would be really important to me.
Yep.
But Bob Chapman took that to say, when you go and you are now hiring people and they come to work for you, even though they're 45, they are under your care.
Absolutely.
Right? And you need to have that same mindset that you do for the 18-year-old. Here's an 18-year-old that I'm trying to get to 22, 23, 24. But you know what? Here's a 42-year-old that I'm trying to get to 48, that they've got goals, dreams, ambitions, and things they'd like to accomplish. And I'm going to make sure that I help them get to where they want to be. And that's coaching. That's coaching. That's why people matter. But the phrase that he had was the people under your care. And he kept hammering that home. And I'm guessing that is essentially his message that you've heard.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What else comes to mind? You mentioned John Gordon, couple conversations ago. I don't even remember.
Yeah, it was You Went in the Locker Room First, the book he did with the Atlanta Falcons guy. Mike Smith.
And so I have that book, and I've read that book as well with the 7 C's. But John Gordon also has another book called The Carpenter. And in The Carpenter, the subtitle to The Carpenter, I have all these books.
Perfect.
The subtitle to The Carpenter is A Story About the Greatest Success Strategies of All. So when you hear that, you hear business book, you hear self-help book, you hear, something that's going to make me be successful. And I can tell you this without in one way, shape, or form giving the book away. The 3 strategies that he refers to are love, serve, and care. Those are the 3 success strategies to greatest success strategies of all. Love, serve, and care. And, I told you I was getting some pushback within the business world about using that word love in the business world. People aren't ready for it. Men aren't ready for it. People who aren't and don't understand love in their personal lives definitely aren't ready to use that word in their business lives or their occupation. I've been told so many different things. And George, bro, that is the issue with this country. That is the issue with this world, is we come to this point where we put so many barriers between us and our emotions that everybody's walking around. We don't need iRobot because we are iRobot, because we're walking around and we're emotionless beings that have become so desensitized to the nonsense that I can turn on the news this morning and see that there's 14 people shot, and my thought is, damn, here we go again. Like there's no, and that's not anybody's fault, but man, I'll stop.
I thought the same thing, man. It was early this morning. I thought the same thing.
It's absurd, and I'm not saying we all need to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, see, everybody matters to me, and I don't know if this is exactly what Bob meant. I've read the book. I know the people that worked with him. But what I hear when I hear everybody matters is seeing people as individuals, not just because, and not hating them because their opinion differs from mine, not hating them because their skin color is different from mine, not hating them because they worship a different God than I do, not just seeing that person as an individual and saying, at the end of the day, we've drawn all these lines that separate and divide us, and there's no line that can truly separate, because the only line that matters is the circle that encompasses us all. Because the only thing that we all have in common, and the most important thing, is that we're all human beings. Period.
Right. Yeah.
Doesn't matter what country, doesn't matter what color, doesn't matter what religion, doesn't matter what sexual orientation. None of that matters. We're people.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple, but it's not easy.
It's simple, but not easy. So that has been a theme to this. But I do think that, in terms of kind of pillars of coaching and philosophies and, setting business strategy and all that, I do like this idea of everybody matters. I love the idea of the people under my care. No matter the age group, no matter anything that you just said, that you're under my care. You're a person. You're somebody I hired. You're somebody I care about. You're somebody that has goals, dreams, ambitions. I want to help you do that. My mindset has been in some of the podcasts we've done is, hey, we're a consulting company. If you want to run your own consulting company in 10 years and that's a goal of yours, let me see what I can do to help prep you so you can do that. Even if I prep you and you leave and you take business from me, it's about me helping you do what you want to do. Because when you leave here, I want you to say, that's the best place I've worked and that's the best person I've ever worked for. That person impacted me.
Everything that you just said is John Lucas when he sat in the driver's side of that car and he told me to come get his job. But why is it so heralded in the athletic world and so shunned upon in the business world? Because in the athletic world, that's all we hear is the Dean Smith coaching tree, the Coach K coaching tree, the Pat Summitt coaching tree, the Gino Oriana coaching tree, like the Bill Belichick or the Nick Saban, or like all of these guys that have made these great guys that are now blossoming in their own environments. It's so big in the athletic world, and it's so shunned upon in the business world. If you're a CEO, a CFO, a COO, whatever, and you're not developing the person who is going to eventually take your place, then A, you're doing the business and the organization a disservice, and B, it shows that you have no aspirations of growing beyond where you are. Sorry.
Yeah. No. I think you're right on.
Sorry, not sorry.
Right. I think you're spot on. I think it should be, and that episode is exactly the one I was thinking of. And if people listening, if you haven't listened to that episode, I think it is Mark, Come and Get My Job, Come Take My Job. It's a story that Jayson was in a car with John Lucas years ago. John Lucas is connected with the Houston Rockets. That's exactly what he said in your story. Hey, come get my job. That means I'm growing. It means I'm growing you. It means we're all getting better and we all kind of move up the chain together, right? It's the people under my care. And we've talked about that a fair amount. But to circle that, kind of put a ribbon on this a little bit. That Grover book was really impactful to me. And I don't know how I stumbled across it. If you're interested in reading it, it is very sport oriented, very basketball focused, but there's always a team leadership motivation twist to it. I think it's a great book. It's called Relentless, right? Is that right? Relentless? Yep. And it's the personal coach of Michael Jordan. And I did a podcast maybe 2 weeks ago that said, and the title of the podcast is Even Michael Jordan Had a Coach. So the best are always hunting for different ways of doing things. They focus on the fundamentals. They find people that have a different perspective, that have a different insight, that will challenge you a little bit. Let me ask you this and then we'll wrap it up, because I thought about this 10 minutes ago. What are you hard to be coached on? What do you struggle being coached on where you sit there and say, where it burns you a little bit or you're not as receptive to the feedback? Is there anything in particular that gets under you that is hard for you to receive that type of coaching?
Less now than it was before, because I'm in such a mindset of wanting to improve. So something that I heard, it was actually at our PGC retreat in late August. Our president, Mono Watson, who's a phenomenal leader and a phenomenal growth mindset person, we were talking about feedback, and he said, there's a difference between welcoming feedback and craving feedback. Like, I am the feedback craver. I am going to ask you to give me feedback before I let you come give me feedback. I want it. I want to grow. I want to improve. I want to develop. And so it's one of the reasons why I haven't learned how to golf yet. I'm very interested in the game, But one of the reasons that I haven't learned how to golf yet is because I want to, knowing how mental that game is and knowing how little things make a big difference, I don't want to have ingrain a bunch of bad habits and then have to unlearn them because, I'm not doing it the right way, and I could be so much better if I'm doing it the other way. But yeah, man, not much. There's not much that I struggle with being coached on nowadays. And when I say not much, I really want to say nothing, because I'm so open to the feedback, because I just know that the feedback is making me better.
Right. Yeah. And I'm going to be honest with you. I struggle with it.
Yeah.
I struggle with it. I beat myself up about it. And the people that know me close know that. It's something I work on, but those are that's my personal feedback to myself for my own improvement. Like, hey, I got to get better at that. I've got to take that but it is, and we could go off on this, and I know our time is running short here, but that mindset of who's giving me the feedback, where's it coming from? Like, you give me feedback, I'm going to take that a lot different than what is the phrase you used? Maybe it's the connection you and I have, and I know connection may not be the word that you've used in the past, but it's that. Maybe it is. It's the connection that you and I have that allows me to receive that feedback. It's the trust that I have in you. If I didn't know you in the first day that I came to work with you on the basketball floor at MICDS 2 years ago, if the next day you had just hammered me on a whole bunch of things, I would have been like, man, either I tap out or I paint a bad picture of you mentally,
Sure.
And then also paint a bad picture of myself. But I've known you for a while now, and that is received much different now. So, I mean, those are leadership things.
That's a challenge to, you said, let's take it outside of the athletic space. That is a challenge to, again, those C-suite executives, those managers and leaders of organizations. That's a challenge to you. If you want to be able to give more well-received feedback to the people who you work with, build better relationships with them, because the relationship feedback is going to draw back to honesty and trust and all of those things. And yes, we all crave and yearn, like we say, we want trust, we want truth, we want honesty. But like I said before, the relationship has to be strong enough to bear the weight of the truth, because the truth is heavy. The truth is heavy. And so if you just go in leading with the truth, if I walk into a gymnasium or a classroom and the first thing I say is, none of you are going to the NBA or the WNBA. Well, that's the truth, but there's no relationship there, and obviously you would never word it like that, but now there's a relationship, and it doesn't take long to form a relationship to where you can start to tell the truth. When I go to these weekend PGC sessions, after the first day for sure, but many times after the first session, I've established a level of accountability and vulnerability through telling my own story that makes it okay for me to be more honest with these people that I just met 3 hours ago. And that's exemplified by the parents and the coaches that walk in at the end of night one. I've been on the court for 4, 5, 6 hours, and they're looking at me like, how have you done in 6 hours what I haven't been able to do in 6 months or 3 years or 4 years? And it's because I come from a place of vulnerability. I've established a relationship, and now I can be able to, through that, hold them accountable in some honest and trustful ways.
Right. So I'm going to make a note here. Let's make sure we talk about that the next time we get together.
Sure.
Because there is something about you and some other people I know that have this crazy ability to connect with somebody in a short amount of time, which changes the whole dynamics of a team, of leadership, of coaching, of feedback, everything that you're just talking about, where it can be a 4-hour basketball session where at the end you've transformed somebody's life.
Yeah.
And I've got some opinions on that as well, but would really love your strategies centered around that, because it is that's something that you develop. That is something that you've got to want to do. You got to know the questions. You got to know your tone. You got to know the message. You got to know, how to reach different people, from different backgrounds, whatever it might. Like, there are ways to master that, and that would be a great discussion, because anybody that's listening, and I agree wholeheartedly with Jayson, your ability to transform your teams, to provide that feedback, to provide the development that your team needs, and not just business, but even your family, your community, your family, like all those people, it boils down to that connection, and it boils down to that trust. And there's so much that goes on with that, man. And if you're not thinking about those things with your team, man, then you're not performing at the level you need to perform at. You're just not.
Level.
You're just not. You're not getting there. You're like, so Pat Riley has some great quotes around complacency, but that's essentially where you're living. You're living in just a whole vibe of complacency instead of like driving and making things the best they can be. So listen, I'm going to let you go, Jayson. I know we're doing this. I'm going to figure out when to release this.
Stop saying 15 minutes. Just stop saying 15 minutes.
It's not a 15-minute talk anymore, because I started doing that with my podcast when we started 50 episodes ago. It was going to be a 30-minute talk that ended up being an hour. Our 15-minute talk is now 45 to an hour, which is perfect, because, again, selfishly, this is one of the best parts of my week. It juices me up. What we should do is do this Monday and set the table for the whole week for everybody, including myself. But anyway, Jayson, I appreciate your time. We'll get together next time, and I want to dive into how to build connections quickly, and how to connect with people, different backgrounds, different outcomes, different dreams and ambitions, and how we can connect as quickly as possible to start moving the needle. So with that, have a great rest of the week. This will be on LinkedIn. This will be on Twitter. If you could subscribe and share and follow Jayson, follow myself. We both have Instagram accounts, all that sort of stuff. But with that, have a great rest of the week. Thanks, Jayson.
Absolutely. Thanks, George.